Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in this merry old world. Um, what a week it's been. Again, drones have been in the news with disaster relief recovery efforts in Florida, and we're joined by Ryan English, who is a symbol on the screen. You can maybe explain that later. I don't know if he's mobile, so I don't know if he is with us. Loretta's here, Colin Snow, and Mr. Simpson at the end of the line there. So let's see. I'm just going to put out a radio call. Calling Ryan. Calling Ryan. Are you actually there behind that symbol? Over. No, not to be heard at this moment in time. So let us jump to well, first, Loretta. How is your home and how is your Florida lifestyle at the moment?
Well, I mean, I am much better off than many people in Marathon and in the lower Keys. So I'm pretty grateful that we were largely spared, but it's still a mess. I mean, being better off than people who totally lost their homes doesn't make it less of a mess. But the Keys are resilient. There was huge damage, a lot of homes lost, boats all over. Infrastructure that was damaged. It really, really took a pretty bad hit.
Okay, shame. And did you have a occasion to use any? I know you take photos when you're around about. Did you take any photos of what was going on down there?
I did take photos, and I used my drone to examine my roof damage. I used it to examine my neighbor's roof damage and my sister. So definitely drones come in handy. I had also taken before and after pictures that I can use in my insurance claim from my drone, and I took more of those photos. So drones are really not just for commercial users, but for personal use. They really come in handy. And some of the pictures that I took before and after, I could compare before and after. And a lot of people were really shocked because our area of Marathon is inaccessible. There's a blockade, not for any reason other than to prevent looting. So a lot of people that come to the beach that's across the street from my house had no idea how the beach had been transformed. So it was really a very graphic way of showing. And I had the before and after photos, as you saw, Gary, on Facebook. So people really got a sense, really from all over the world that come to the Keys, what had happened.
And that's transformed as in not there anymore, or moved to the left or right? Is it a huge shaping of the land?
Well, it was mostly the fact that it was completely denuded. I mean, it went from being this verdant island to really, other than palm trees, like the mahogany trees that are, I think, pretty rare species, were completely denuded. I mean, it was almost a blank beach from before.
I suppose we have to put a bright head on it, or a bright spin on it, and say, well, it's Mother Nature's way of doing a little bit of tidying up, and it'll grow back in in other ways. But anyway, you probably didn't want to hear that, did you? I should have thought about that before I started talking, shouldn't I? Sorry about that. That wasn't very nice. Shame. Okay, well, I wish you well with all that, and I hope it all continues to resolve itself. I don't know. Ryan is calling out again. I think he is driving, so I guess
yeah, I'm on.
Oh, you're on. Oh, right. So you've been in the thick of it with Fly Motion, and you've had. I think you said you had about 16 teams, 10 or 16 teams or something flying down there. What have you been doing with Fly Motion?
Yeah, so we initially had 16 teams pre-deployed, and then we spooled up another 6 teams for some other separate operations post-disaster. But yeah, it's to my knowledge the largest pre-deployment of UAS in a disaster type scenario that has ever happened. And we had assets everywhere from and still have out in the field. We're on today marks day 13. And so basically what we did is we strategically placed assets everywhere from St. Augustine down to South Florida, south of Miami. and they rode out the storm in these particular areas. And then once obviously the conditions improved where we could deploy, then they went ahead and did that.
And so, does that mean then you were when you arrived on scene, you were in a sort of a search and rescue phase, and it went from that to analyzing, the infrastructure and the damage done. How did that work out?
Predominantly, what our mission was focused around was damage assessments and infrastructure inspections. One of the things that we saw, excuse me, with with Harvey is obviously due to the amount of extensive flooding, is there was a lot more search and rescue type missions that were being done. Where in Irma, we didn't have as many search and rescue type drone missions, but more on the damage assessment and infrastructure. As I mentioned, I still have over a dozen teams deployed out in the field that are still doing active work. And so, yeah, definitely quite an experience. Having myself, come from the first responder community for some very big agencies and working for the government pretty much my whole life. This was quite a impactful situation that I think obviously you can always fully prepare for, but there's always things that you can learn and improve on. And we deployed our mobile drone command center, which is where I was running our operations out of in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area.
And so you think your first responder background was a big asset in this situation?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Obviously, like I said, it started with the pre-deployment of assets, and we deployed to the strategic locations in a nice sunny day, and then within about 36 hours or give or take, we were experiencing some pretty intense storm conditions. And like I said, we had teams from all over the state. Our teams were strategically positioned all over the state, and so some of those teams, even myself, I was in a very heavy duty hotel, 12-story hotel, major name brand hotel, and to actually feel the building moving like you're on a boat, and to see the windows bowing, was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And the winds and the rain, and coming out obviously once the conditions were safe to do so, and to actually see structural cracks, in the stucco and the fascia of this hotel from the movement of it was just mind blowing.
And what's what learning value, learning outcomes has your company gone through with this, and who's going to pull it all together? And also, we spoke last Friday, I think, with Matt Dunleavy, and he was there with his Skyscopes team, and they've certainly learned a lot. So who's going to pull all the learning together after this? Because there's been years worth of experience gained in a couple of weeks, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know my team has already begun preparing an after action report, which we'll be presenting. Looks like probably in November at DJI Airworks conference, where I'll be speaking, and we have some other publications that I believe it will be going out in as well. The whole thing here is, it's from a disaster perspective, you can always think you're prepared as best that you can, and I think that we did a very good job and had the majority of what we needed, but I think there's always lessons that can be learned. And for example, I had a lot of my teams that were all over that, the wireless infrastructure took a severe impact, and I was basically complete offline of comms with them. Some of them for a day or 2 days, and so of course at our command center we had both LT and satellite-based communication systems, but being able just to get flyaway sat systems to some of my crews, I think would have definitely been something of importance. And like I said, it's communications is key, and when you lose that, I think that definitely presents a lot of challenges in the operations. And it did for us for about the first 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, I suppose that is pretty, well, dare I say it, pretty standard. It's a bit glib to say, but pretty standard in an emergency, isn't it? And communications comes back bit by bit. I see you've been joined by Steve Cohen from the Drone User Group Network, and it strikes me, Steve, that perhaps you're one of the entities that might pull together some of the education piece, or at least I said again last Friday with Matt that this really does seem like it would make a great topic for a meeting down a pub with all the people that were there, and hammer out what happened and what could be done better, and a pat on the back and a beer at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean, that. I'm glad you bring that up. We had a crew of people that that traveled down to work with Irma, and I don't know I don't know all the details, but it seemed like there was some NASA involvement during the course of this. It was less search and rescue and more of a surveying of the area. So it was more autonomous flight, less first responder kind of things. At least that's what I'm led to understand. But I think there might have been a little mission shift while they were down there. So I'm waiting to kind of get a little debrief on that. But it was really wonderful that our community came together to help fund those guys. We did really promote their activity, and my feeling is that what else are we here to do? Like, if we don't do this, if we don't laud the benefits of drone use for these very things, then we're really just not. Why bother? We're kind of done, because it's always been that all along. It's the positive use, and to help each other, and to use the technology for good. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the first. Well, it is the first. It's definitely the first post Part 107 set of major events that have come along, where the technology is there. And I think it's probably, if we're to be very honest about it, it's the first hurricane season where the technology is at a point where it is deployable, and we've mentioned communication links, ways of sending imagery, all that stuff. All the stuff is finally intersected this year, and
deployable and dependable.
It's just a shame. It's a shame it has to be such a big disastrous events that underline it, but it's still very, very positive for the industry, and well done to everybody that's responded. And I think weirdly it might well be the savior of the marketplace for 2017. But a man that's going to disagree with me on that is Colin Snows. And Colin is he's come out with his I forgot what it was, the 2017 drone market sector report. We'll drop back to Florida and stuff in a minute as I go along, but I just thought that was quite a good link, so I'm going to run with that. So Colin, your report, well, maybe you want to outline what it is, and then I'll come with a couple of questions for you. You have to unmute yourself, Cole.
There we go. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, so thanks, Gary, for having me on, and thank you for your support with SAS News, because what we did is we went out and took a survey of the drone community, that's both hobbyists and commercial users, and we asked them questions kind of in 4 areas. We asked them about the drone purchases, we asked them about if they're a service provider, how big are they, how long have they been in business, if they're a business user, so an industrial user, We asked questions about that, and then we asked about their use of software. So we kind of had 4 separate surveys in one, and we got a very good response. And again, thank you for that. About 2,600 respondents came to the survey and answered all our qualifying questions. And it's been a 3-month project, so I can talk a little bit about that, but I can cut to the chase and go directly to your question about, what did the survey and research find about what people do and how are they using drones? We kind of asked that in 2 areas. We asked that first to the people who are buying drones. We asked standard questions: what did you buy? And then what brand was it? And then what are you intending to use it for? Are you using it just for hobby photography or video? Are you using it for commercial photography? Are you using it for surveying, cinematography, real estate, humanitarian purposes, or just hobby recreation? Maybe you bought a drone just for without a camera and you just want to fly it around. And then we asked the service providers, what services are you offering? And always what bubbles up to the top, and this has been true of all of our surveys since 2014, is that photography and video, so film, photo, and video, that's the #1 single largest reason why people buy drones. And what we do is we look at this in a combined area. We look at hobby, we look at commercial photography and video, we look at cinematography, real estate. We combine all those together, that's 60% of the intended use. So, but when we look at it just for professional purposes, when we weed out the hobby use, commercial photography and video, cinematography and real estate all bubble up to the top. Again, that's the #1 reason. So both in the hobby world and in the commercial use, it's film, photo, and video. It's what's interesting is that always comes up as #2 is surveying and terrain mapping. That's the #2 use.
So you say that's their intended use. Am I speaking? Yeah, there we are. I am. I didn't know. You say that's the intended use, but then do you ask the question, who actually makes money doing that? And have you been successful making money doing that?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. And yes, we do. We ask that question. So we then, in a separate set of questions to the service providers, and we have qualifying questions to know that we're talking just to service providers. We got about 1,000 responses from service providers. And we asked them specifically, how much money are you making? What services are you offering? And again, aerial photography and video is #1, like almost 50%. But they're not the ones making the money. Very few of them are making money. The people who are making money are the surveying and mapping and GIS folks. People are using drones to do surveying and mapping and GIS work. But overall, for the service providers, I think one of the most interesting finds in the whole survey was that in the US, certainly, that the US market is flooded with service providers, and very few are making money, and very few are making enough to sustain a full-time venture. For example, the data showed that about 85% of service providers make less than $50,000 a year, and about 80% perform only 1 to 5 operations per month.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I jump in? I mean, my prior career before I got into drones and education was as a commercial photographer, and it's a race to the bottom. The technology has taken away a learning curve, and it's like the iPhone and what happened to every commercial. I mean, I think there was a series of Time magazine covers that were all shot on iPhone this week. Right? So I don't see that as a huge surprise that there's a glut of operators and not a lot of people making money. That's just an observation.
But doesn't it
kind of natural to the field?
Doesn't it just sort of show here's me, right? What do I know? But doesn't it show a sort of disconnect between expectation and reality? Because when you say that the surveyors and the people like that are the people making maps that are making money, they're actually people that already have a skill and a qualification, and they're using the drone to enhance their business. They're not learning a new skill and coming out, because let's be honest,
the same could be said about cinematographers and filmmakers.
Oh yes, the very few. Yes, you could. Yes, I suspect.
You're a filmmaker first, and then you make movie, and then you use a drone as a tool.
Absolutely, and probably the people that are making money with aerial photography, and there's probably only a handful, and they were really good at their trade anyway. They're because it's anybody with a digital SLR is a wedding photographer, you know, and it's just not the way it is it? You have to have a
digital SLR, really?
Yeah, anybody.
Go ahead.
Colin, could you separate out, or could you separate out those people who were using drones as an add-on to a service that they were already providing? So, I mean, I agree that just taking photos with a drone, you're probably not going to make $1 million, but real estate agents who are now using drones themselves, or engineers, or people like that, I mean, how do you separate out the added value of having?
That's a good question. And yes, we did that because we asked them what industry they worked in now. So we snuck in a lot of kind of questions that help us to divine the data and understand, you know, are people who say that they're, for example, offering services to agriculture, are they working in agriculture? So I kind of went in with a bit of a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is that people hang out their shingle and they say, yeah, I do utilities infrastructure. Yeah, I do agriculture. Yeah, I do cinematography. But then when I asked the question up front, what industry are you in? Now they're not in that industry. So they say they offer that service. That's why we asked them a question about how much money are they making. And kind of here's how it ranks in top 1 to 10 order. It's surveying and mapping and GIS. That's number one. And these are the question. The data that I'm giving you now is the top 10 drone services that make over $100,000 a year. That would be enough to sustain yourself, right, as a viable business, at least in my mind. Given how expensive it is to live in some places in the country. Surveying and mapping and GIS is number 1, aerial photography and video, number 2, utilities infrastructure, 3, forest construction, 5 is agriculture. And we're not surprised at that because many people were already they were agronomists. Consulting, cinematography, movie, oil and gas, mining and aggregate operations, and then real estate was down at number 10 at the bottom.
Now, are you ranking based on actual dollars or on number of jobs or hours in the field?
That revenue that they make. So they reported their revenue.
Okay. And is that gross revenue?
That's revenue from that's revenue just from their drone-based operations.
No, but is that a gross revenue?
Yeah.
Net or gross? Yeah,
okay. It's a gross revenue.
That one thing that I think important to note is obviously I consider ourselves an industry leader, especially when it comes to solutions and services on a national scale. I mean, we also do international stuff as well, but I would, especially on the survey mapping side. That would not be number 1, obviously, for us. We would be more on the infrastructure and inspection side. One of the things I think that when you're looking at a revenue model, and is I personally I believe that the barrier to entry is too low. I mean, anybody can basically go and it's like you said, everybody's a wedding photographer with a DSLR, and I feel the drone is very similar in that, you can go down to your local Sam's Club, Costco, Best Buy, and spend $1,000 and you buy a drone and you throw up a nice WordPress site and you're a drone expert overnight. And so I think a lot of it, what ends up happening is, those people, they're not, excuse me, they're not making a lot of money because in reality, there's thousands of those people doing the same thing. I think where the money and obviously from our perspective and being in this business since, early on is, you know, the money's in specializing and in niche markets. It's not in real estate, in, you know, taking photos of houses. The reason is because the bottom has fallen out in that market. I mean, I know people personally that will charge $25 or $50 to go, you know, take photos of a house. Well, those people won't be in business very long because obviously they're not breaking down what it costs them to drive there. And at the end of the day, time is money. That's a volume-based business, and a lot of the drone companies are single operators, so it's not a scalable business. And so I think that's one of the things that me personally that I think, you know, regarding obviously the you know, the survey that you did, Colin, I think that's fantastic. First off, that you put that together. I would have liked to be a part of that in providing some of our feedback. But I think that's, you know, one of the things when looking at a revenue model is, you know, a lot of these people, they're not making money at it, you know, and you know, a lot of, I mean, I know people, tons of them that will do this stuff for free, which is mind blowing to me. But, you know, like I said, to each his own, you know.
Well, it's almost like a these storms have almost formed a bit of a casting couch, I think, in some ways. And I can't remember which company it was, but they were offering work at $250 a day, and even sat on the other side of the world.
It was Drone Up or something like that, was it?
Well, I far be it from me to name and shame, but if you want to do that, that's fine.
I seem to have a reputation.
I was just avoiding that.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I have a hard spot in my heart for them because of their plagiarism of
spot in your heart.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll remember that. But $250 a day in America, if you're running your own business, is that a lot of money? If you're driving yourself there, putting yourself in a hotel, and all the other things, tell me. I'm overseas. Tell me.
So the thing is, if I may just say that the drone is it's a tool. It's not an occupation. So, you know, like I have a good friend who works in like he's got a nighttime waiver and he works a lot in infrared spectrum, doing HVAC inspection and things like this. And he's interested in getting into mapping and GIS, but he doesn't have the certification in GIS. And the GIS people are like, yeah, dude, I'm very sorry, but that doesn't work in this country. You have to have it. You know, they're very protective of their certification, and so they might use your data, but they're certainly not gonna pay you what they're gonna get paid. So there's a kind of you know, careerist take on this, and I can't argue with it in a way. I mean, at a certain point, you know, I'm going to do surgery. You know, I'm really good at, you know, hey, your appendix, come on in here. I got my automated surgical suite. Hang on. You know, I mean, at what point does that, you know, does it go there, you know?
Well, our regulations here in South Africa are quite simple. They state that if you measure between any 2 points, any measurement taken between 2 points on the Earth is a survey, and in whatever form, and you have to be qualified to take that survey, even to the point that you are not allowed, as I couldn't hand images to a surveyor and the surveyor could then turn it into data. The surveyor has to take those images, and I suppose at the end of the day what it comes down to is that surveyor has done his training, got his tickets, done everything, and he's also insured. So if those measurements for that property or the boundary or the road or the if it's wrong, then there's recourse. Whereas if I just go out and do it, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to name names like you do, but at the end of the day, if we use any one of the major apps that develop, we can call the pictures that come out, we can't really call them maps, we can just call them really nice images that may or may not be accurate. It takes a qualified person to correct them and sense check them, and that's the terrible rush of opportunity that some people have taken. Is it false? Drones are a full. I'm ranting. I'm going to stop ranting now. I'm stopping
Well,
ranting.
can I just say that a lot of people would be very happy to make $250 a day, and
Okay.
no, it may not, it doesn't sound like a lot to people who make a lot more than that, but a lot of people don't make 50, 60,000 a year, which is what 250 a day comes out to. So, even 50,000, I mean, if you're married and your spouse is making 50, then you're making 100. And a lot of people don't make 100,000 a year. So I think there are a lot of places in the country where you actually can live pretty well on 50,000. And there's a lot of unemployed people. There's a lot of people that were forced into retirement who are taking drone jobs and making a supplemental living. I mean,
right? It's the side gig.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. Well, a lot of people. I mean, most of the people I know do it as a side gig. I mean, more than people that I know doing it full time.
Right. So, but that's not really a scalable, sustainable business, then, is it? So, I mean that's great, but but traveling it. Oh, how can I put this? No, I understand that, but it is 250 a day enough really to sustain a business if you've traveled across America to get to Florida. Let's say you're accommodating yourself.
Of course not. I mean, you'd have to have your expenses covered otherwise to get to that destination, or you've got to pick up a crew down there. So no, it's not sustainable, but you're not taking into, a reimbursement, model of true cost. Listen, if a client, I do side gigs all the time, and you're going to pay me to go out to your Long Island location, and you're gonna pay my travel to get there. So you have to model it that way. Maybe Loretta and I are just East Coast elites.
Thing that I think
people were provided housing, and they're getting free meals, so their expenses are kind of limited, and you can get to Florida by bus.
I think a lot of what, obviously when you're talking about a sustainable business model, I mean, you're introducing the word business. And unfortunately, it's just, not everybody has business sense. They may have a drone, right, but, do they actually understand business and how to make money and grow a business? There's a lot of people I know that are fantastic people. They have great skills, but they can't put that to use to grow a business. And, it's just, some people are going to get that, some are not. And obviously, it all really, I think, boils down to what are you looking for. The one thing that, I think is, like I said, created the barrier to entry is too low is, there are a lot of people that are doing it as a side gig. And there's a lot of people, I mean, I can't even count the amount of resumes that we get in our office, in our general email box every single week of guys that, I just got my Part 107. People assume that because I got my Part 107, that they're an expert because they got a card. Well, when my son turns 16 and he gets his driver's license, I would think most of us would agree here that he's probably not a skilled expert driver, but he has a license just like I do. And I wouldn't send him driving a tractor trailer across country just getting a license. And I think that's one of the things that I think the industry has failed in, is creating a false sense for a lot of these people that they think that because they have a Part 107 that they are now a expert in UAS, which is, to me, not accurate.
So when somebody comes and knocks on your door, what do you like to see on their CV? What's the better picture?
You cut out there. I apologize. What was that?
No. When somebody knocks on your door for a job, what's the best picture for a CV? There's two sorts of people. Let's look at. Let's look at sort of the older person, the 30-year-old, and if someone's 20 and 30, what different things would you look for on their CVs?
Well, one of the things that's important to us is that they understand technology. Anybody can be trained, and we do, all of our own in-house training. if people come to us with no experience. But obviously, you know, they have to have some understanding of technology, because that's what you're going to be using. You know, everything from software and different hardware, being able to troubleshoot technology and whatnot. So that's usually one of the biggest things for us. And, you know, we're not somebody that discriminates. That, you know, obviously from the point of whether you're younger or older, we've had a lot of great people of varying ages that have some phenomenal skills and understanding of technology that have worked out quite well. You know, I think there's a lot of perception as well that, you know, it's just the younger generation that is the ones that understand the technology, and I don't think that's totally accurate. You know, so that's something that is important to us. And then, you know, obviously we're going to make it a requirement that if they don't already have their 107, that will be a first step. And then, of course, working into getting the hands-on training. The other thing that, you know, I mean, and this has been kind of ironic through a lot of the, we've had a lot of manned pilots with many, many years experience. You know, I have somebody on our staff that, you know, has been flying commercial jets for his whole career. And he's, of course, a fantastic manned pilot, but obviously when he stepped over into the UAS world, it was a relearning, you know, and completely new skill set that he was learning. And so, you know, obviously you have a basic understanding of airspace, you know, and ground school and things like that. But I think that it's something that is has to be built upon, and through the hands-on training is really where you learn this stuff.
And well, one of the reasons I sort of wanted to bring up age there was I wanted to bring it back to the survey a little bit. I was very surprised that unlike, well, all of us here except Loretta would be in this category, and that it's all old duffers, Colin. It's all old duffers getting 107s.
Yeah.
Because I'm 29 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, and Gary, that's not any different. The survey we've done 3 different surveys over the past 4 years. It always comes back the same. In this particular case, you know, 41% are baby boomers, 52 and over. 43% are Gen X, 32 to 51, but only 16% are millennials. But the majority are in that, you know, somewhere between age 32 and 52.
Yeah, I was amazed that people were generally that old. I kind of thought it would be younger, and I wonder if that is not a trouble storing itself up for the future, or if it'll roll itself out. What else did I I said photo really. I think
Gary, is that who answers surveys?
Sorry. Oh yeah.
Is that who answers surveys?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, we know a lot of young people, and I teach at a college where a lot of kids are involved in UAVs and UAS.
Just it's the survey approach, and no offense intended, but I know I'm offensive, at least lately. But I think that the segment and you're not capturing the younger audience because of maybe they're not taking or not seeing the survey.
That could be the case, because if you're to look at the SUS News audience, is actually almost exactly the other way around. It's sub 35 is the sort of the end of our peak, really.
I'll take it.
They're all down there. It's all the young folks. So what I end up feeling is far too old to be running SES News. That's what I think, anyway. But then, speaking about offensive, you mentioned offensive, then, Steve.
I decided this week that I needed fewer friends. That's what I decided. I came in hot, and I mean, I really must cop to, you know, really jumping on this one particular Facebook group that's in my region. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, you know, I had the the administrators of the group's page open, and you know, admittedly said, screw that, I'm just going to put this on blast and put it out to the community that actually has a brain in their heads. Because I have to say, and I'm just getting really, really fed up with the internet, with social media in particular, that the signal to noise ratio is just insanely high. And, you know, I've taken just to not reading comments and going on with my day. But at the same time, I was wrong in the sense that I did incite more than I helped. But I was, you know, this is my turf. You know, I'm based in this region, and we, meaning the Doug, and in this region in particular, along with DC Doug, have worked damn hard to keep the community's nose clean. And these guys were, you know, not all of them certainly, but a share of them were just putting up videos that were just blatantly, you know, in manned helicopter traffic over the Hudson River, Liberty Island at night, and you know, they're just knuckleheads, and that's saying it kindly. So yeah, I kind of had to, I just took it upon myself to take the heat and to kind of point, you know, I wasn't, you know, it's not like I was ratting them out to the FAA or, you know, like I would, but, you know, I mean, they needed to be told that this was just not acceptable. And I'm still catching grief, you know, because of it. And I really, quite honestly, don't care, you know.
No, but you're quite a large member group now. It must be. What's your membership number now?
In the region, our Doug membership is around 3,500. That's fee free. It's quite a bit less, as you might imagine, for, you know, for an annual membership. And, you know, that's the chicken and egg that we face, you know, the value proposition versus, you know, what we charge for membership. We're trying to check off our boxes. But nationally, we're about 25,000 members.
That's what I thought. And at the end of the day, peer pressure of the old people have got to start. Peer pressure's got to start having some sort of effect, or is it never going to have effect? Because if you're buying the thing from Best Buy and going out and flying and making that video, you're never gonna meet your peers at the end of the pier.
It is. You know, there's smart people everywhere, and there's stupid people everywhere, and you know, you've basically democratized drone flight, just like you've democratized filmmaking and video editing. And, you know, back in my day, you know, it was desktop publishing. You know, everybody was a designer in the early 90s. And there's still design firms and there's still designers. Whether they're doing as robust a business as they once did is, you know, that maybe that's another survey. But, you know, this is the state of our society, that the you know, Uber for X, meaning, you know, unknown, is what we're really looking at. You know, you know, it's like a few years ago, I was out in LA and it was so stereotypical. It's like, well, I'm the caterer, but I also drive and I'm writing a screenplay with you know, Kevin Costner. Like, real, and here are your bags, sir. Thank you. You know, this is your room. You know, so it's like, whoa, that's, you know, that's kind of happening all over. That's the, you know, and without getting too, you know, on my high horse about the vanishing middle class and what sort of pathway is there to the middle class and STEM education and blah 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 blah. This is what we see when people are pinched, you know, for money. That it's, a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that is a worldwide thing. Now, is the Doug working with any other groups on the peer pressure angle? I mean, how could you work with the AMA, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you teeing that up for me. We I don't want to name names again, but we are in direct contact with the leadership of of a very, very large CBO in the
Anyway,
and right, of course, and I mean, who else is there? But you know, we've established a very direct line of communication to work together in advocacy and education, and you know, and that sort of stuff. So we've always been on each other's side. We've always had each other's backs, but you know, we're talking more directly and more, I guess you'd say, regularly. But that's really all there is to say about that. There's nothing, you know, nothing official or you know, coming down the pipe.
Okay, well, talking about peer pressure, on the end of the pier there's Bruce, and we've put him under absolutely no peer pressure at all this evening. Bruce, you've also been upsetting people, this time the nice people from the council just down the road. What's going down with that at the moment?
Well, this is interesting, you know, this whole drone phobia thing, I suppose. But yeah, I'm trying to organise an international event. It looks like the numbers will be around 300 people for this tiny little town, which is a major event. We've got people coming from all over the world. We've got the US and Australian drone racing champion. And you would think that a small town in countryside New Zealand would just, you know, really benefit from this, and that the civic fathers would be all in favour of it. But I've just been pushing stuff uphill for weeks now, and I'm just getting no traction because it's small town. It's, you know those American TV shows where you drive into town and you got a corrupt sheriff and you've got a council and they lock you up and they, you know, take you out the back and bury you with your car in a big field. It's just like that. It's unbelievable. I'm expecting to wake up with 6 feet of dirt over me one morning. It's well, when did you start working for Tourism America, Bruce?
Yeah. Small town America tourism. You're the man.
This is just like this. This is a Stephen King novel come to life in New Zealand. It's amazing. So, you know, what can you do? I'm still battling away, but
you don't want to move the event because it's your iconic tower and your iconic airfield and things like that.
There's only 2 places that the world recognises in New Zealand. That's Middle Earth, Hobbiton, and the Tokoroa Airfield. And to be fair, my videos have been seen nearly 100 million times. So it's not a small number. You know, it's a pretty good movie. Actually, I think the most popular New Zealand written and produced movie had about 9 million in the box office, which means it probably saw about 1 million times. Now, my videos have been seen 100 million times. We've got hundreds of people wanting to come from around the world to experience what they've seen on YouTube. And we've got a local council saying, we fully support tourism, but no, you can't come.
Yeah. And
I want to see your video. Send us a link. I want to be up 101.
Well, I've got everyone's welcome.
There's 2 channels.
I think I have shown some of your videos to school kids.
Quite
Sorry,
right.
Go on.
It's XJet and RC Model Reviews is where you need to find it. And from this, I learned that it sounds like you were out in that rain too much. It sounds like you've given yourself a cold.
Yes, sadly, it is spring flu or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I just struggle on anyway. Yeah, so I'll keep battling away. Got a lot of support from the community, but unfortunately, the civic fathers, they've already been elected. They don't need to do anything else with the community. They've got their jobs. They're happy.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, well, fingers crossed it goes well and sort out. And I think you're thinking about having that in sort of March, April time. Would that be right next year?
Yeah, there's 2 dates we could have it. There's a big international, when I say international, it's an Australian New Zealand model jet meeting here in February. And then we've got the Warbirds over Wanaka at the end of March, early April.
Wow.
So thinking of, yeah, I've spoken to the Warbirds organisers. They're quite keen to jointly market with us. So we'd have people coming to New Zealand in early to mid-March, spending a week here, and then going on down to the Warbirds over Wanaka, which is one of the widely recognised air shows in the world.
Yeah, instantly so, I'm full of oh wow, so that would be oh wow. That would be oh wow.
But but I know we can't do that because we've got an airfield that in the 5 months from November the 1st 2016 till March the 31st 2017, it generated $25 in landing fees. So you can't forsake that sort of money just for 300 people spending a week in the town.
No, that's true. No, that's a fair point. Well made. Yeah, you can't blow that sort of money. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous talk on your behalf, I think, personally. Wow, look at that. It's 11 minutes to go to the top of the hour. We've had quite a few comments. Apparently, I'm nearly as good as ranting as you are, Bruce. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of training, and I think Steve's learning his rant and moaning training from you as well. Advanced. Yeah, it's advanced course. I think Steve mentioned an interesting thing, Colin, that perhaps you should ask some traditional industries if they're being disrupted by the young upstarts. Somebody in the comments and said drones. I'm sorry, whoever you are, sir or madam. I'm not going to try and pronounce your name, but Cameron is your surname, unless that's your first name. Drones are not an occupation, but it's a disruptive tool that would cause consumers to reconsider using a professional. The consumer knowing that you can get more info for less money. I'm not entirely sure that's right. If you want verifiable data, but anyway, Colin, are you going to go and ask? Can you go and ask other industries what's happening to them because of drones?
We did start some of those questions in there. Yeah, that's the kind of the next level of detail we would want to get into, and that's really understanding what's happening in industry. But one of the things that we did find, and I pointed this out in the report, was that we haven't done what's called crossing the chasm yet, which is where you see a widespread adoption of a technology into the mainstream of companies. And there's lots of reasons why, and some of that has to do with privacy issues, some of it has to do with security issues, some of it has to do with insurance issues. There's lots of issues why companies have not go full bore. I am going to adopt a drone-based program, either securing it, outsourcing, or doing it myself. One of the things that we did find is that the majority of companies, at least the ones that we surveyed, and this was over 800, the majority of them were using in-house pilots. So they were not outsourcing to service providers. They were using that inside. The other thing that we found in the survey that was quite interesting, and we had to tease out this data to look at the surveying and mapping and GIS folks. They serve in this pivotal role within the industry, almost as an intermediary. On the one hand, they are doing and offering drone-based services, so they're offering that as for outside hire. But on the other hand, they are the main, their main customer are the larger organizations, because this is just a service that they've been providing to them for a long time. So when you look at who's outsourcing that, they're outsourcing it to the GIS people. But there's lots of data that we have within the survey, and lots of data that'll come out in further reports. But you're right, this is something that we kind of need to look at is, how disruptive are drones? One of the things I point out in the report, and this wasn't part of the survey, but it's something that we have been looking at, and that's how digitized is a particular industry. So for example, you look at construction, it's not a very you look at oil and gas, it's not a very digitized industry. Most things are done manually. And so drones are a digital capture tool and a tool that provides digital data and digital information in the end. Most of the work that's done in those industries is done on a manual basis. So it's in the construction, let's take construction for example, it's the old world school way of doing things. And people have been talking about construction technology and for a long time about how great it would be, but the way the majority of building is done, somebody creates a plan, they put it on a blueprint, they throw it over the wall, they give it to the construction company, and then they produce it kind of the way that they think that that plan is supposed to go. There's no marrying and back and forth between them until they find out, gee, we poured the concrete in the wrong location. Now the smart companies that are using drones, they're finding out, hey, I can see right away you poured the concrete, or at least the footing for the concrete before you pour it, it's in the wrong location. So there's lots of benefit, but still a long way to go before the majority of industries actually go and adopt it.
I've forgotten the name of the hype curve thing. I've forgotten the name of the company that does it, but I see that we're on the trough of disillusionment now, according to them.
Gartner, yes.
Gartner, that's it. Yes, we finally hit the trough. Thank goodness for that. I say.
Disillusionment.
Yeah, we're
it's
in.
It's a great
trough.
Band name.
It is. Yeah, I saw them the other week. But they reckon we're 2 to 5 years out for adoption, which is very interesting. I think those Gartner hype curve has been pretty accurate. I think it's following quite well. Well, what I'll do.
I have a question. May I ask a
Well, all right then. See,
May I just ask a quick question?
you'll get upset and abusive. So I better let you.
Just that's awesome. I love that I'm developing a reputation. That's awesome. Colin, just on a quick question, and this is sort of semi off topic, but did you capture any folks that both race drones and operate a commercial drone enterprise? Was there any cross chatter of that crossover?
No, I mean, yeah, I can. It's the data's there, yes, because we asked them, what are you buying your drone for, buying your last drone purchase for, and some people put drone racing, but it's a very small amount, very, very small. And I wouldn't even venture to go and tease that data out because there were so few that actually put, yeah, I do drone racing.
Gotcha.
Where were you taking that, Steve? Were you taking that in the idea of the skill set that they might have?
No, and what I'm actually thinking is that that drone racing becomes a kind of gateway drug into just drones in particular. And I think that while there is a portion of the drone, like drones for science and information versus drones for recreation and racing, like that NASCAR and NASA divide, I personally think that there's a crossover there, and that the drone racing is a great gateway for young people to then perhaps pick up drone technology and make a business of it later on.
Yeah, I think
as they age.
I think when I rule the world, if I were an employer, I would look more favorably at someone that had a youngster that came along that had the AMA tickets and had the stuff and demonstrated perhaps he'd been to here's Mr. Walters live from Canada, 3 minutes to go. Better be quick, David, better be quick. He's joining us from the bar. Those are flipping IKO drinking gigs. It's terrible. Yeah, look, he is. He's in the bar. David, how are you doing?
To get some headphones so I can hear you. So just bear with me one moment.
All right.
Let me see what I've got. Let me try this.
And I don't even know if I'm in the room anymore because it's hung here.
Okay, now I can hear you. There we go.
That's great. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So sorry to jump in, guys. I know you guys are just about to wrap up, and I'm literally still in the hall, as you can see, at the ICAO HQ. Just to give you a quick rundown of what's gone on today, it's my first time at the ICAO event, and really, really impressed with what's actually being achieved. And I guess it's only until you step inside this kind of, I say in a circle, but get to attend some of these meetings that you realise what's being achieved in the background. So lots of guest speakers are on today. I'll start with El Lawrence, who appeared from the FAA. 911,000 users are currently registered their aircraft with the FAA. 911,000.
So when you say users, what do you mean? Was that the old $5? Is that N registers? What are you talking about?
Well, so I believe that's the total number of users currently registered with the FAA. And he confirmed that 88,000 of those were commercial operators.
Okay.
That's the only detail I was given with regards to those figures. 107 permit automation is coming in 2018 with the LANC system. Again, just to advise everyone, LANC is not currently active on any system by any provider at the moment, no matter what they might say. And it is coming in 2018. We also heard today from Chuck Johnson from NASA, who's talking about the automation with regards to the NASA UTM, how they're utilizing that to test their C2 link commands, which is quite impressive to hear. The research they're doing, it sounds pretty impressive, and actually I wouldn't mind getting involved in it. They're doing 40 operations a month which on average is about 8 to 10 days worth of solid flying. Man, I want to get back into doing some flying again. So that was kind of really impressive to hear. He's more what a lovely sound gentleman he is. I've met him for the first time today, spoken to him several times on LinkedIn. He's the head of EASA, and it's pushing forward the changes and the recommendations with regards to regulations. He spoke about the 5 classifications that they're proposing. That's going to be risk-based, remote pilot competencies, and how the UTM registration and identification of aircraft is going to help moving forwards. I think they're proposing that around 2020, I think it is. Mike Gadd was here from the UK CAA, so I was able to have a good chat with him about data security and privacy with regards to UAS systems and manufacturers, etc. So that was an interesting chat, but that's probably as much as I can say with regards to that. And also, Mike Lasone from Yaris was here. He was talking about the advisory board that they've set up and advising countries on the risks around UAS. He was also talking about the strategy that they have planned moving forward. I believe all the presentations from today are available on the ICAO website. So if anyone wants to see about what's been going on today, you can go onto the ICAO website, go under events, and then you can download the presentations. There was some pretty good stuff on there from NASA and also from the Yaris guys. And they're talking more about the SORA, so the specific operational risk assessments. And again, that's something we're actually looking to implement within CQNet. So it's been great to see today a lot of questions raised, what their challenges are, and there are systems out there already that actually can fix some of the challenges that they have. So lots of discussions are going to happen this week, I think.
Was much said about UTM yet?
No, that's more on the drone enable that's happening towards the end of the week. That's on Thursday, Friday. So Gary, if time allows, I will try and touch base with you towards the end of the week, and we'll do maybe a UTM drone enable kind of summary, because again, there's a lot of fear around the UTM, the registration. Is Bruce here actually?
Bruce is here. Yeah, Bruce is here. He's on the end.
I'm waiting for Bruce to beat me with the stick about registration. But sitting here today and hearing the kind of the plans that ICAO want to put in place and the reasons behind it, it isn't to take control of everyone and everything else. It's just to enable safer flying of UAS for everyone else. And they're trying to advise a global registration. So, for example, Gary, you've registered your system in South Africa and you now want to go and fly it in the UK. You bring it to the UK, they can look you up in a database and go, yeah, okay, this guy's good to fly. He's got X, Y, and Z qualifications. You can go and do whichever flight it is. Okay, some permits still need to be requested. But the general consensus is that, yes, it does allow traceability. And yes, those that are going to do bad aren't going to register their aircraft. And if they do, they're not going to put the correct details. It's like stealing a car to go and rob a bank. You don't go, oh, well, I need to register the car first with the DVLA. You're just not going to do it.
Yes.
But for as much as you can, for the greater audience and the greater users for model aircraft and commercial aircraft. But
there's a question.
Just so I touch that.
Go on.
Just so I can. Again, the registration at the moment is only being talked about at a commercial level. Although they would like to bring everyone on board with regards to registration, what's been discussed, very touched on today, has been about the commercial operations and making that safety. And I think that's going to form the basis, as I've said before, for moving forward with the general registration of UAS.
So do you think are they proposing moving away from or stepping back from model aircraft association? Is there anybody there from any model aircraft association anywhere in the world?
Not that I've seen, and it's really disappointing to see that actually no one's here.
But ICAO has said from the very beginning that model aircraft are regulated by the NAAs, which is...
I
don't taken on model aircraft at all.
And then also, then I'd have to ask. So you're saying one registration system all around the world, and we'll all hold hands and skip and sing Kumbaya and all those other good things. Are countries agreeing with that idea? Are sovereign states saying, are they nodding heads, or are they just smiling politely?
Well, no, I mean, the likes of, Yves Moore is here from EASA. He's saying, yes, we want to work with ICAO, and yes, we all want to work together, and yes, we are trying to work with the same standards. Security are waving at me, so I think I need to get moving. But the sense is that everyone wants to everyone wants to be able to I don't know, find a solution that kind of try and fixes everyone's problems. And I don't think they're going to do it. And again, ICAO are only an advisory; they're not an enforcement. The same with likes of Yaris; they can only advise. They cannot dictate. But again, it's down to as you said, the CAA and the NAAs deciding on whether they're going to adopt, the proposed suggestions. Excuse me, I'll just throw my bag over my shoulder. Whether they're going to accept the proposed kind of developments or not. And, it would be great from a commercial perspective if we had the ability to move freely between countries, all working to the same framework, same training standards, and it be recognised globally that I can fly with the UK permission, within France, within the US, wherever that may be, and it's having that trying to achieve.
It's a bit of a pipe dream, though, isn't it? You're breaking up a little bit. I think isn't that just a huge pipe dream? And at this point, I think I should note that SUS News is actually the approved news provider to ICAO. If you go to their site, but anyway, that aside, we are the ICAO news provider. But anyway, I don't know how. I wish I knew how, but we are. I don't know how that happened, but there we are. No, well, Bruce, are you gonna come back with some sound bites now? Because here we've got a man in the heart of the beast here. We've got an agent. We have our agent there.
Yeah, I saw that this global registration thing, and the way that David paints it, that you'll be able to go from one country to another, and no problems because you got your registration. I don't think that's going to work, because every country has dramatically different rules and regulations for SUAS. There's no consistency. So if I have registered here in New Zealand and I know all our rules and regulations, if I go over to Australia, well, then I'm not up to date with their rules and regs. If I go to Portugal, again, I would probably be breaking all the rules and regs. So there's no guarantee that just because you're registered, you're going to be able to fly in a given country. Though almost certainly, in the name of safety, that country will want you to sit another certification to prove that you're aware of their rules and regulations before they let you loose with your drone.
Yeah, and I can agree with that, Bruce, and that's the case at the moment. But what they're proposing is, trying to standardise, permission in certain areas with certain aircraft in certain environments. There isn't one stop that fits all. I mean, the guys from Singapore that are here, they've got massive problems because essentially their state is completely urban. So it's not like you're flying out in open areas. In Singapore, you're flying around towns and very large cities, and one of the challenges that they're facing, you're probably going to.
I think. Oh no. I think David will say goodbye as you get on the. I'm on the train. I don't know if that's an international thing. People shout that on the tube in England. I think we've lost you, David. Thank you very much. If you can hear me, oh yeah, on and off. Eep up. Go ahead, Colin. You're going to say something? I see you.
Yeah, I was going to say something. I was going to say that the figures that he gave, the 911,000 that have been registered, that there's we look at the compliance rate and how many drones are in market and intended for commercial use. And right now, the FAA is trying to figure out how many operators are there and how many are real, because one of the things we found in our survey is that, let's just take a couple of statistics. Number one, 27% of all of the people who say, hey, I'm operator. I'm a service provider. They don't have their Part 107 pilot's license. Then we look at the data that says, how many drones have been sold into market and then designated as a potential commercial use. Huge disparity between that 88,000 that says that it's commercial and about the 1.4 million that are probably in market that people are using for commercial. So people aren't becoming FAA Part 107 pilots, at least 30% of the service providers, and then at least 50% are not complying and registering their drone for commercial use.
Yes. Yeah, no, it'll all come out in the wash, won't it? I just wondered what is going to make the washing machine turn. I have been watching some of the ICAO videos, and they have been very interesting so far. So it's certainly worth keeping an eye on this conference. But Bruce, I think you just think they're not going to get anything done, is the bottom line.
Well, they're only advisory, and that lack of compliance is a really interesting thing. And one thing, like with EASA, they try to take it too far, I think. Now, we know all heard about geofencing, right? And we must geofence our drones. And I think EASA are pretty hot on this. We've got to geofence our drones because although 99% of the people are responsible and will operate within the parameters prescribed, there's going to be this rebel group, and we have to control them through geofencing. Okay, why do our cars not have speed governors on them? We know most people drive to the speed limit and everything, but there is a certain element that will break the speed limit. Now, we say we need geofencing so that drones don't fly into restricted areas and put people or property at risk. But there's never been a major loss of personal property as a result of these small drones, yet we want them geofenced. But how many people die as a result of other drivers on the road exceeding the speed limit? If you're driving down a freeway, motorway, highway, whatever, and you travel over the speed limit illegally, lose control of your car, you can hit a bus and wipe out 50, 60 people. But there's never been any thought about governing vehicles to avoid the rebel element causing a harm to public. So why are drones so different? We've got to have some consistency here. It's like evil drones. Ooh, I'm going to do a rant on this later, but this is a pre-rant.
Yeah, pre-rant. Well, yes, no, you're not wrong, and it did say on that newspaper article, which I'll put in a link below, that you were a drone expert, so you are allowed to rant on the very topic. Yeah, I do worry that the lattice thing and the noise that's being made about that as well. Is geofencing not just a way to open up pay to play for airspace operations?
Yeah. Quite possibly, and the other thing is that we've still got this horrible anti-drone sentiment. I heard that someone at our airfield, a GA pilot had flown in and made an incident report to the Civil Aviation Authority about a model aircraft, he called it, but probably a drone, crossing his flight path as he was landing. So I got hold of the details, and I have video footage of the pilot landing. And he actually said he had to abort the landing and do a go-around. I have video footage of his first pass, which was almost a touch and go, and of his landing, and there is no model aircraft in the air anywhere. There are a lot of birds flying around at this time of year, so I'm thinking, my goodness, it's still this thing, if you see something, you don't know what it is, it's a model aircraft or a drone, oh, it's terrible. And this has been filed, Civil Aviation haven't followed up on it, but at the moment it's logged as an incident. But I've got the evidence, the proof that it is not an incident. CAA haven't even come to me to investigate this. It's like, oh, good, another incident. We can use that now, fight against drones. What's going on in this world?
And Colin, did you measure fear? Have you measured fear recently, Colin?
No, we didn't measure that. No, but we did measure, look at why businesses aren't adopting. And there's a lot in the report about that. And that is, fear of the unknown. That's kind of one of the things that why it's a factor in why businesses aren't going widespread with their adoption. It's public sentiment.
I wonder how many years out we are from it just being normal. I don't think we're too far away. I think if you just look at the number of stories about drones in the mainstream media, they're dropping away, they're falling away, which is great. I mean, look. A magazine closed. The first drone magazine closed last week, and that's just because the interest isn't there. But I personally think that's a good thing. It just means the market's growing up. We're getting normal, it's level, we've got to level out, and real solid use cases, as these disaster relief events have shown. That's solid use cases. That's grown up, real use. After you, Bruce.
I tell you what, if you want to make some money in this industry, forget about flying to take photos and that sort of stuff. The real money to be made in the next 5 years in this industry is drone repair and maintenance. I tell you, I've heard so many stories from people that have bought Mavics and things. A guy, there's Alan Yu, I don't know if you've watched his channel, but he bought this Mavic. He got one of the first ones. He's flown it for, 6 months or something. The gimbal stopped working. He sent it back to DJI. They wanted to charge him 2 hours labor just to diagnose the gimbal wasn't working. He told them that. But it cost 2 hours of diagnosis to confirm.
Yes.
And then they said, well, it's not warranted, you're going to have to buy a new one. And like a huge bill for what is a relatively small thing. Now, here in New Zealand, we've got some people I know, he had the same similar problem, had a gimbal fault, sent it to DJI. They said, oh, yeah, we've looked at your drone, the gimbal's faulty, and you need 4 new motors and this and the other. And so he just said, no, send it back, fixed it himself, cost him like $50, bits off eBay. So there's a huge market there for third-party drone maintenance. So forget about flying, forget about all the other services, just fix the damn things, you'll make a fortune.
Yeah, no, you're probably not wrong there. I just mentioned in the comments, Rectrix Drone Services send their regards to you, Colin. Met you 2 years ago in Florida at a drone conference. So they are sending their regards. Yeah, no, I put a silly little video up about, I think delivery drone landing pads are going to be a great way of making money. There's going to be all sorts of services on the side. That are going to need to things that are going to need to fit in, because if we're going to have delivery drones, yes, you're going to need an area to land in, and they're going to have a proper delineated approach into them, a way to go and bail out if your aircraft has an emergency, where you're going to send it off to crash, just like they do real ones. Someone's going to have to physically go out on this is where Silicon Valley disconnects, I think, a little bit, because things actually happen in the real world. You just can't put it on a bit of paper. You've actually got to go to the real world and see what is there, and that's going to take a long time. So I think that's my retirement job. And yeah, you can repair them, Bruce, and I'll find a place to crash them. We can set up a nice little deal there. We can set it all up, some nets, everything. Nods. All right, look, we've already gone over time. It's 17 minutes over. So does anyone else have anything else before we go down the road? Oh, no, you're looking at your notes.
I did see that those tests they did by dropping drones on dummies' heads. I see that information's resurfaced again, and they basically said 1.2 kilograms, nah, forget about it, you're not going to hurt anyone, which is kind of interesting, because our regulator says if it's 18 grams, it'll kill you. I suppose you'd choke on it, would you? Yeah.
yes, you might. Yeah, well, the funny old thing is 1.2 kilos is well, they did use Phantoms, didn't they? But yes, and Peter, I won't crash your pizza delivery service. No, I won't do that. All right, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. It's been a great one this evening. It's been very interesting. Lots of topics. Thanks very much, Colin. I will put a link in the bottom. It is on SES News at the moment. It's the top story on SES News if you want to find the link and jump off there now. But otherwise, I'll put it in the link in the bottom when we've finished. I'll also put in Bruce's fantastic orange hat photo in the local press. And the thing is, when people post local press stories, I love diving off for the other interesting local events, Mancy's, all the weird headlines that you see. There's some great ones there down in your part of the world. And thanks very much to Ryan. I don't know if you're still with us or still driving. Safe journey.
I'm still here.
Safe journey, and hopefully you'll send us some stories to SES News, and we'll hear some more about what went on down there in Florida with you guys from Fly Motion.
I will do that, definitely. Appreciate you having me on.
No, thank you very much. Thanks very much, everyone. I can't end these things, so I'll just end it with, oh, and dear viewer, thank you very much. You're in several places in the world this evening, so thank you, dear viewer. And we'll be here again, 2100 GMT next Tuesday. Cheers.
Thank you.